Alrighty, we're back with another Portal video. So, a couple days ago, I made a video talking about the Portal, but I watched it back and realized that I spent like the first 2 minutes rambling on about different tech issues, so I want to try to avoid that in today's video. And also, I want to dive deeper into the discussion about the Portal and just kind of talk about the state of the game, how I feel about it, and talk about some things that I think Bungie could do that would actually help out where the portal is and player sentiment right now. So the portal. At the making of this video, it's been in the game for about 4 months, give or take, and I have to say that after playing it pretty consistently the entire time, I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. I think that it's not the greatest model that Bungie's ever introduced. I'm not even sure if it's something that they're going to continue or if they're just going to discard and create something new later on at some point. Anyways, the game does seem to be in maintenance mode, or at least that's how I feel about it. You can just kind of see that based off of the lack of new things coming into the game. Overall, I don't really hate the portal necessarily though, because I do think it does some things pretty well. But overall, I think that we're just in a very bad content drought, and that definitely doesn't help the portal, especially when the portal is made up of basically like 95% old content. Anyways, the new model now is basically we get two new big expansions a year with story. You go in, you complete the story, and then you're done. Once you're done with the story, it's basically just the portal. You can go around and explore. So for example, with the launch of Edge of Fate, you can run around and explore Kepler if you want. You can even do some of the missions there. However, unless you bring in a fire team, you're going to be doing it solo, and you're also going to be exploring Kepler solo. I think it's an okay environment. It's not the coolest. It's definitely not up there with like Dreaming City or anything, but it's not like the worst either. It is a little bit confusing to navigate at times, but anyways, I don't know. I don't really think that this model is working as well as the old one did, where we had like drip-fed content throughout the year. We had stories to look forward to every season, and they were kind of consistent. The magic of logging into Destiny 2 every week has kind of faded away, and I just don't think there's enough happening right now. But like I said, I think the game is just in a maintenance mode, and that's just what we have to expect for the foreseeable future, at least here. So the portal is divided up now. It has solo ops, which I like to consider these as basically glorified patrols. You can only do them by yourself. You can't bring a fire team in, obviously, as it's called solo ops. Then there's fire team ops, which are basically your normal three-man activities. So like old strikes, battlegrounds, even some of like the planetary destination activities like on Europa. You had the Empire hunts, those are in there as well. Then you have the Pinnacle Ops, which are basically exotic missions, and they also cherry-picked some specific dungeon encounters that they threw in there. And lastly, you have the Crucible Ops, which is PvP. And essentially the whole point of playing the Portal is just to level up and chase higher tiered gear. So basically gear, weapons, and armor now drops tiered inside the Portal, Tier 1 being the worst, Tier 5 being the best. In my opinion, Tier 1 and 2 are kind of irrelevant. Tier 3 and 4 are like the equivalents of old good legendary armor and is honestly plenty good enough for your average player. And then Tier 5 is the best, and that's what everybody wants to get their hands on. And it's pretty simple. As you go ahead and increase your power level, you'll unlock the ability to play content at higher level difficulties. Completing these activities at higher level difficulties will allow you to chase higher tiered loot. So for example, if you go ahead and play on ultimate difficulty, you'll be able to earn tier 5s. But if you went and played on expert, you wouldn't. You would only earn like tier 3 or 4. I'm not sure exactly, but you get the idea. The higher level the difficulty, the higher tier the loot. So as a player who hit 450 power pre-Ash and Iron, I can without a doubt say that the changes they made recently are feeling much, much better. In case you didn't know, if you played pre-Ash and Iron, going from 400 to 450 took like a millennia to achieve that, and it definitely was not worth it, especially at the time. And it probably still isn't even worth getting to the max level, which is now 550 to be honest. I don't even think there's really a benefit to hitting 550 at the moment, other than just saying you're done with the grind. But anyways, pre-Ash and Iron hitting 450 took way longer than it does now to get to 550. And on top of that, I think it actually took longer to go from 400 to 450 than it took to go from 10 to 400, which was kind of crazy. But anyways, the changes they made recently to the power grind just feel way better. I feel like I'm getting way more primes. I'm getting consistent tier 5s in PvE. The chance of these bonus drops also dropping prime. It's just making it go by much faster. It feels way more rewarding. Could they go ahead and tinker it a little bit and make it feel even better? Maybe. But honestly, it's way better than it used to be, and I have to give them a thumbs up for that one. Also, the changes they did to the deltas and the negative modifiers are really good. So before, when you would go ahead and apply negative modifiers to an activity, you would also directly increase the enemy combatant power level, which was really bad. So if you don't know, applying negative modifiers to the activity is like supposed to be this like big thing now, because now you can kind of like pick what modifiers you want to run and you can like ignore the obnoxious ones, but honestly, there's not like a whole lot you can choose from. They're all kind of annoying, so it's like pick your poison. But anyways, when you would put these negative modifiers on the activity, you would do it because you want to increase your score multiplier, which would then increase the grade you would get by completing the activity, which would then dictate the loot you would get. So that was like the incentive as to why you would want to go ahead and put these negative modifiers on the activity. The problem is that sometimes you would have to put too many negative modifiers on the activity to get a good grade, and you would find yourself at like a ridiculous delta. And being at like -50 or -60, God forbid, that would just be an absolute pain. So the changes they did now is basically difficulties are locked at certain deltas. So now Grandmaster is locked at -25 and Ultimate is locked at -30. These are also really good, and I'm glad they made this change. However, one point of contention I still have with the portal is its matchmaking capabilities. So obviously Solo Ops has no matchmaking, you're playing by yourself. Pinnacle Ops doesn't have matchmaking, and Crucible Ops is PvP, so you'll be playing other Guardians. So Fireteam Ops is essentially the only place you can really matchmake. However, there's like a overall general matchmaking which you can choose for like certain difficulties, and it will pick any random mission, but you can't actually go into the portal and choose a specific mission. So for example, I can't go into the portal, go to the Fireteam Ops section, scroll down to like the Technocrat, and then play that on ultimate difficulty and have the game matchmake for me. I have to actually go out of my way to find other Guardians who want to run that activity with me. And when people are sitting in your fire team and you're putting on different multipliers, it's going to affect their grade differently. So the game might be like, oh, you're going to get a B plus grade, and somebody else might only get like a B minus, or you might get an A grade and somebody else might only get like a B plus. So then you have that whole headache of like, you basically have to find other guardians who are okay running the modifiers you want to run on the activity and are going to be okay getting the loot you're going to get from that mission and the way you set it up. So I kind of want to see some changes going on with that as well, because right now the matchmaking for it's kind of in a weird spot, at least with the fire team ops. I get it, like solo ops, obviously you're solo. Pinnacle ops, you might want to find a custom fire team anyway because it's like more complex, I guess. And then Crucible Ops, obviously it's PvP, but like I'd like to see some changes with the way matchmaking works in the Fireteam Ops. Next up, and this is obviously a very big point, and that is essentially 95% of the portal is old content. So we have the solo ops, which I like to consider these as basically glorified patrols. Technically, they're new missions, but I think like 5 out of the 6 of them basically take place on locations that we've already had access to in D2 and we're able to explore. Caldera being like the only new one because it takes place on Kepler. The Fireteam Ops, with the exception of the 3 new reclaim missions that came with Ash and Iron, everything else in there is old content as well. And even the reclaim missions aren't even really like new because they take place in the Plaguelands, and that was a location from Destiny 1. And then we got the new exotic mission, which they put in the Pinnacle Ops, and that is actually like a brand new piece of content. But essentially, The majority of the portal is old content, which is not good. I think that what they need to do is start to introduce content that is outside the portal that exists in the game right now and bring it over to the portal. They've been doing this, but at a very, very slow pace, and I think that they need to go ahead and actually start to haul the rest of the game inside the portal, because right now the game feels really divided. It's like you have the portal, and then you have everything outside the portal. However, the portal is like the new thing where you are in tiered loot, you can climb your power and all that stuff, so for the most part you want to be there. However, it only makes up like a quarter of the total content in the game. So it's kind of silly to neglect the rest of the game like that. Um, there's really just no reason to farm anything outside the portal because you're not going to increase your power and you're not going to get tiered loot and you're not going to get gear sets or anything like that. So there's really no point. I think there's way too many assets that exist in the game right now that are not in the portal that need to be. If they're going to double down and commit to the portal, I think they need to start to haul everything over. If they're not, it would make sense as to why they're doing it this way. But I mean, like this like flip-flop behavior that they've had. Like a little example recently was with unstable cores. It was a system that came out at the beginning of the launch of Edge of Fate. It was something that was supposed to like slow people down in terms of infusing gear and increasing their power. And then recently they just decided to take it away. There's a lot of little systems that Bungie introduces and then they just take it away. The portal's a pretty big system though, and it's half baked, and it would be kind of silly to give up on it now, but maybe they will. I don't really know. All I know though is that if they're going to commit to the portal, they need to start to accelerate the rate at which they're introducing content that is already physically inside the game and is playable into the portal, so that way there's at least just more content. I think that players want to earn new loot doing new missions inside the game. And I think that right now we're at a really bad point with that specific goal. So a good example of this is inside the Pinnacle Ops playlist right now you can earn a weapon called the Mint Retrograde. It's a strand pulse rifle. It's really good. Most players have one, and if you're a player who doesn't, naturally like most D2 players, you're going to find the most efficient way to get your hands on one ASAP. I think that Bungie needs to start to tie specific loot to specific missions inside the portal, aside of daily focus drops, simply for the fact to help increase the diversity of content that players do inside the portal and want to actually run. So right now you can go ahead and do any mission inside the Pinnacle Ops playlist in the portal, and you have a chance to earn a Mint Retrograde. The problem with this is that it's just a generic drop you can get along with basically everything else, and there's really no reason to do anything other than the most efficient mission. I think the only way to really encourage diversity is to tie a specific piece of loot to a mission so that way people actually have to go play that specific piece of content. I think that right now if they were to introduce new loot into the portal, people are just going to do whatever's most efficient. If they're going to introduce new content, people are just going to run it just to experience it and see what it's like. If it's bad, they're just not going to run it anymore. If it's really good, it's just going to be the new go-to mission that people run for loot. And if they introduce both simultaneously, they're just going to evaluate how good the mission is and how efficient it is. And if there's no loot tied to it, they're just going to go farm the old missions they've already been doing for quite a while to earn the new loot. And I think that this is really bad because essentially you need to tie loot to a mission in order to get people to play it. And I think right now what they should do is they should start to introduce new loot and tie it to specific missions and have like a broad loot pool, which can be your daily focus drops for different missions as well. So for example, introduce a new auto rifle that can only drop an encore. It can never become the daily focus drop for any other mission inside the Pinnacle Ops playlist. It can only drop an encore, but encore can also get a daily focus drop for like some random armor set or a mint retrograde on top of that. I think that's a good way to go. So, for example, add an auto rifle to Encore, add a fusion rifle to Starcross, God forbid make a new piece of content like, I don't know, maybe a strike that takes place on Kepler. add that into the Fire Team Ops playlist, and maybe put a unique sniper rifle that can only drop in that strike. I think that's the direction it needs to go. There needs to be a bigger reason for people to play a diversity of content inside the portal. Anyways, I think that's just about gonna do it for this video. So a little TLDR is I think right now the big expansions every 6 months just aren't cutting it. I think going back to the old seasonal model and drip feeding content and giving players more of an incentive to log into Destiny 2 every week is the way to go. I also think that they need to start to haul everything outside the portal that exists in the game right now into the portal and start to give these missions tiered loot and also simultaneously tie specific loot to specific content inside the portal to encourage diversity. Let me know what you guys think about that. I'm not sure if that's, you know, the best way to go about things, but I think personally it would be better because I feel like players want to do specific content for specific loot, especially when it comes to new content. Like if you were going to do a new piece of content, you would want to get new loot doing it. I can only imagine. On top of that, they just need to start to create new content as well for sure. We're in a pretty big drought and doing the portal, which is basically like 95% old content, just does not feel good. It was okay for the first like couple weeks of the expansion and it got old pretty quick, and now just about 4 months in, it just no longer feels good. And if Bungie's gonna double down and keep the concept of the portal alive, I think that they gotta haul the game into the portal, start making new content for the portal, tie loot to specific activities in the portal to encourage diversity, and yeah, they already started making baby steps. The leveling grind feels much better. The changes they made to the modifiers feel better, but there's still a lot of work to do, and yeah, the game feels like it's on maintenance mode, and that just does not feel good for your average D2 enjoyer. Anyways, if you've made it to this point in the video, thank you. I appreciate you guys watching and listening to me yap about Destiny 2. I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay frosty.
There's only one data artifact here.